Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Rob Mess. Today's topic, A Guide's Life, featuring Nat Hab expedition leader Luis Vinueza. Thank you so much for being here with us today, Luis. We really appreciate you being the first person on our interview series. So let's just start right at the beginning. Where were you born and raised?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to talk a bit about me, but more importantly, to talk about the adventures that I live. So, I was born in Quito, Ecuador, but when I was little, 1 year old, I moved to Mexico, and I came back to Ecuador and Quito when I was 7. And so, Quito, as you know, is the capital of Ecuador, and is the city that you are going to travel before you hit the Galapagos. And Quito is quite high, but it's a beautiful city. It's surrounded by volcanoes. We are at 9,000 feet above sea level, and we are surrounded by volcanoes, as I said before. We also have one of the largest colonial cities in Latin America that we are going to visit, and we are going to see from this beautiful formation that I just show you before. Um, this is just one of the examples of the places that we visit that have a lot of historical connotation for Ecuador. And so that's where I was born and raised for the most part.
Great. Yeah, it was really fun to explore Quito for that day. You guys guided us around. We saw this amazing church. We had a wonderful meal in town as well. We appreciated learning a lot about that. Let's talk about before we dive into your professional side. Let's talk about what you like to do when you're not working, when you're not leading these amazing adventures for us.
Okay, so I live in the Galapagos Islands. So in Galapagos Islands, we are surrounded by nature. So I like to still get to contemplate nature in my free time. And that's one of the sort of unique aspects of the islands is that nature gets very close to you. I also like biking and surfing, and that's also possible to do here in the islands. And I also like a lot photography. And so all of these skills are very good for the job that I do.
Oh, absolutely. Um, and again, we'll see some of your great photography as we go forward. Um, eh, you look really nice lying on the beach there with your friend. Uh,
Yeah, that,
that's one of I think that was one of the most unique parts of the trip too, being that close uh, to wildlife, just in how comfortable they were being around us. So this is a great shot. Um, So, can I ask you what inspired you to become interested in your chosen field?
well, thank you for the question, Robert. Actually, this is a picture that goes back 30 years. And so this was in 1995 when I got to the Galapagos to study seabirds. And so what got me interested in wildlife was a trip that I took when I was 12 years old. I went to the Galapagos for the first time and I got in love with it. So I told to myself, I have to go back to the islands. And so when I heard that biologists go to Galapagos, I, decided at once biology was going to be my field. And so that's how I got excited and I got a position available to study seabirds on Española as volunteer. And so I went there to study seabirds for 7 months at a time, and I did that twice. So that was a very cool time of my life, where I was surrounded by nature, and I was lucky to study seabirds on an island that we actually visit, Española Island. It's a paradise for seabirds. So back then I was studying Nazca boobies, but I also got to work with wave albatrosses and other seabirds. And this particular place is amazing because the scientists have been working there for the past 35 years. So they know very well what's happening with climate change and so on. But later I did a master's and a PhD in the United Kingdom and then in the United States, where I study the ecological role of marine iguanas, which is another animal that we're gonna get to see a lot during our trips around the Galapagos. And marine iguanas are super cool because they are the only lizards in the world that dive and feed on marine algae. So that's very cool.
Oh, great. Can you talk a little bit about more about your educational journey and the path it took you on?
Okay, so yeah, so when I came to the Galapagos, I was studying why Nazca boobies divorce between mating seasons. And so why partners split up between mating seasons. That was part of my dissertation. And later I was offered the position to volunteer at the Charles Darwin Station. So I volunteered for the Marine Lab. And in that Marine Lab, I was also offered the opportunity to work with marine iguanas. And so that's why I chose to study the impacts of El Nino on their ecological role, on how, El Nino and La Nina, which is this warm and cold phases, affects their ecological role in the system. And with these opportunities, I was able to complete a master's and a PhD dissertation based on, experiments that took me 9 years to develop.
Wow, that's
And so a
that's
result of this is, sorry, as a result of this is this publication, which I am very proud. And so, yeah.
well, 9 years is a long time to study. Absolutely. So you must have really loved what you were doing.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, it's interesting that with all that education, you chose to become a naturalist guide. What led you to that decision?
Well, that's a very good question, Robert. So before I became a naturalist, I was a professor for 7 years at the university. But I felt somehow that I was losing that connection with nature. And I always saw my friends around me working as guides and having more time to contemplate that. And so I decided that I wanted to spend more time out there and basically to be able to contemplate nature through the eyes of people, which I love to share. And so that's something that makes me really, really happy. Yeah.
So basically, instead of being in a classroom, you went out into the world and made it the whole, made the Galapagos your classroom. Uh, I think
Yes,
that,
definitely.
well, I guess I could talk firsthand a little bit about that. So let's get into the trip. Let's talk about the trip for a second. The
Yes.
Galapagos discovery, the Nat Hab experience. So I was
Uh-huh.
fortunate enough to enjoy my Galapagos adventure with you and with Daniel Sanchez as well this past summer. So I know firsthand what a great teacher you are in the field. So you know, let's let's get right into the trip. So after we explored Quito's old town with Danielle, we flew to Baltra, where we met you at the airport. Now from there, we were brought to our ship, the Petrel. So can you talk about how
Yes.
many different ships that NatHab operates in the area?
Yes. And now I am just showing the same boat that you went on, the Petrol. So this
Oh,
is a catamaran. This is 115 feet long. I think it runs at 10 nautical miles per hour. It has three decks, and each cabin has its own balcony. We also have a jacuzzi. And in the top deck, we usually have barbecues. We also have an area to store our kayaks and paddle boards. So it's very nice to sail on this one, especially to observe marine life on the top deck like the other boats. Now, this is a new addition to our fleet from the year 2025. We started to operate with the Tip Top 4. It's also a boat that runs at 10 to 12 nautical miles per hour. It's 125 feet long. It's also very comfortable. It has 10 cabins, and it has also a couple of decks where you can observe nature, and so also very comfortable. And finally, we have the Nemo tree. which is a catamaran and is also a sailing boat with a lot of open space for our guests, with smaller cabins than the other boats that I just showed you. But this is the only one where we might be able to sail every now and then. So as you can see from this slide, this option offers you a lot of open space to be out there.
Well, I tell you, I found the Petrel to be just a five-star hotel. The food was amazing every night, and the staff on those ships just pampered us, and they took great care of us the whole time. It was really an amazing experience and a very comfortable ship too. Um, the are all the ships as comfortable?
Well, the Petrel is the most comfortable one, and then we can say that the T-top comes second, and then the Nemo 3 is more tight, is more for the adventurous people. So you have their smaller headquarters, definitely.
Oh, great. Thank you for those details. That sailing looks like it would be a very interesting change of pace from going on the boats with the
Yeah,
motored engine. So it's not just a sailboat; it will also have a powered engine as well.
exactly. It runs at 8 nautical miles per hour, and so it's a bit slower than the other two that we have. But yes, we sail when we have favorable winds, and so yes, we do that, and our guests actually enjoy that. And as I said before, the Nemo tree has a lot of open space out there for you to enjoy wildlife, which is what I like.
Yeah, it was amazing to be on the top deck of the Petrel, and we were able to, see dolphins swimming and stargazing at night too. I mean, that was amazing to be able to look up and see the stars up there at night. It's quite an amazing ship. Uh, but I'd love to try the other one sometime.
Yes, you
All
should.
right. So let's talk about the islands. How many
Right.
of the islands are we going to be exploring?
All right, so let me show you a map of the Galapagos so I can clarify this a bit. And so we basically do two different routes with most of our boats with a bit of variation between them. And so I am going to try to show you two examples of what we do, one with the Petrel and the other one with the Tip Top 4. Okay, so one part of the trip includes the west and the central part of the archipelago, and there we visit 7 islands only. Okay, I say only because we concentrate on Isabela, which is the largest island of the Galapagos, and we spend at least 3 days going around Isabela and Fernandina. Actually, 4 days going around these two islands when we go to the west. And when we go to the east, we visit approximately 12 islands. Okay, and so it's a bit different, but the islands that we visit in the east are smaller. Now, what's the difference between the east and the west? Well, the east, which correspond to the islands of San Cristobal, for example, Española, which it has the red arrow here, or Santa Cruz. Those are the older islands. Okay. Now the islands that are to the west are the newest islands. Just to give you an example, there we have a volcanic eruption last year in 2024, and before that in 2022, and almost every 2 years. So that's a very active part of the Galapagos, which does not represent a danger for you. Also, in terms of seabirds, the most or the largest accumulation of seabirds happen on islands like Española with the red arrow, or with the yellow arrow Genovesa, which is another island that we visit. Why? Because they are closer to deeper waters that are off the Galapagos, because the central part of the archipelago is relatively shallow. It's only 600 feet deep. Okay. So it's not that deep, but outside of the archipelago, the waters go really deep. But also the islands are different in terms of temperature. Okay, so we have some islands that are more tropical than others. And so while we might see most seabirds in the east, like albatrosses, red-footed boobies, Nazca boobies, or blue-footed boobies, in the west, we are gonna see other animals that like colder temperature. And so in this graph, you can see the temperature in degrees Celsius, and you can see that the island of Fernandina and Isabela. Fernandina is the island that has the shape of the seahorse and is to the west, and Fernandina is to the west of Isabela, have the coldest waters. So there we see most Galapagos penguins, but we also see flyless cormorants and a lot of sea turtles, lots of marine iguanas, and lots of marine mammals. And this is because the waters in the west are colder than the waters in the north, which tend to be more tropical, and the waters in the south, which are a mix of conditions. Okay. And so let's just say that we are gonna do the west route. Okay. So this is a map of the west route, and so you have to follow the red circle that I have here, and that's the location that we start this trip. And so we start in the island of Baltra, which is surrounded by that red circle. And then the first afternoon, we move to North Timor, which is just north of the airport where we land. And there we are going to have the first chance to see seabirds, frigate birds, usually these males with the red pouch inflated, and blue-footed boobies. Okay. Obviously, I won't be able to show you everything that we are going to see on each island, but I just going to show you the highlights. So this is going to be the beginning of your journey. Okay. Then the next day, we do a long navigation at night before we get to Isabela. And so if you look at Isabela, is the island that has the shape of the seahorse. And part of our expedition involves crossing the equator twice during this journey. All right, so we're gonna go to Punta Vicente Roca, which is the first red circle to the left. And that's a beautiful place to learn about geology, to see the fur seals, and to see sea turtles for the first time. Okay. Then we go to Fernandina, and I'm going to show you what we see in these two islands. So as I said before, in Punta Vicente Roca, we see a lot of newer islands, as I said before. So geological formations that are very interesting. So we can learn a lot about hotspot and volcanic eruptions. It's like an open book of geology. But then will be the first time we see fur seals, which is one of the two type of sea lions we have in Galapagos. Also, this will be the first time to swim with lots of sea turtles, because here the water is cold, so we have plenty of marine algae. And then, as I said before, we move to Fernandina. Fernandina is the newest island, where the last volcanic eruption happened in 2024, and there we have lots of marine iguanas, lots of them. So this is the best place to see them swimming. And so this is also an important predator of the Galapagos. It's the Galapagos hawk. And so this is a top predator of terrestrial systems and feeds a lot of marine iguanas. In this same place, as I said before, we might be able to swim with marine iguanas and to look when they feed as we snorkel. Then the next day, we move again back to Isabela, to a place that has a lot of historical value because Darwin landed there, but also pirates and buccaneers and whalers use this little cove to anchor their boats. So we are gonna climb a mile up to look at Darwin's Lake and to observe the landscape from there. But we'll also get to snorkel again in this wonderful location for a chance to see again sea turtles and maybe many other creatures that we usually see there, among them penguins. Okay. Then we are gonna move to another location. It's called Urbina Bay. That's south of Tagus Cove, and there we're gonna see the yellow iguanas, and that will be the first time for us to see giant tortoises. These are the giant tortoises from Alcedo volcano. Okay. Then later we're gonna move down south. We are still on Isabela, so the first circle is gonna take us to Elizabeth Bay. That is the narrowest point in Isabela. Okay, and then we're gonna move to Punta Moreno, and this is one of the best navigations to see marine mammals. I mean, all the west is good for marine mammals, but especially this navigation from Elizabeth Bay to Punta Moreno. So what we're gonna do in Elizabeth Bay is to write our zodiacs, okay? And to check around for this area that has the highest concentration of penguins in the Galapagos Islands. So we're gonna drive our zodiacs through mangrove forest, where we're gonna see sea lions on top of mangrove trees. We're gonna see golden rays. We're gonna see sea turtles. We're gonna be able to see them as they use this habitat, as well as birds like this lava heron that preys on animals that we have living in the mangrove, and pelicans as well. Okay. And this, as I said before, will be another good opportunity to see a lot of penguins and the largest marine iguanas, because here is where the water gets coldest through the whole trip. So this is another good place also to see flightless cormorants. Okay, flightless cormorants you can only see if you do the west part of the trip of the Galapagos. Okay, as well as these beautiful green sea turtles that we are gonna see in Punta Moreno again. And then this beautiful horn shark is also another one that we usually see around these waters. Then we are gonna visit Puerto Villamil, and so we are gonna go east, sorry, to Puerto Villamil. We are gonna land in a very pintoresque town, and then we're gonna take a bus and climb up to the rim of a volcán Sierra Negra. Okay, so this is Puerto Villamil, a very pintoresque town. And then we're going to take a bus that is going to drop us here at 3,000 feet above the sea level. And the idea is to walk 2 miles up to look for a bird like this, a vermilion flycatcher, which is one of the few places where we can see this one. But the main attraction is to look at the rim of this beautiful caldera, which is 10 kilometers wide. Okay, it's one of the largest calderas in the world. And when we have good weather, this is the view that we can see from the top. And Robert was there in a good day, so he remembers this very well.
Very well.
Yeah. So then we are gonna go to Isabela, to the town, and we are gonna walk there in the afternoon, looking at the sort of Pinterest town, and then we will get back to our boat, the Petrel, to continue with our exploration. And so our next point is Santa Cruz Island, which is with the red circle again. And so we are going to visit Puerto Ayora to go to the breeding center, okay, and to look for the little giant tortoises that are being raised there because we want to protect them from invasive species. And by visiting this place, you obviously support their conservation. So we are going to learn about this restoration program. We are going to get to see the little ones up to 10 years of age. And we are also going to be able to see giant tortoises with this morphology that are only present in islands that are dry, but we never see them except at this location. So that's very cool. Now, in the afternoon, we will visit our beautiful tortoise camp, but I'm going to talk about that later. Okay, so these are unique giant tortoises that we only get to see at the breeding center. Then we continue to Santa Fe, okay, and in Santa Fe Island, we're gonna be able to see the pale iguana, okay, the pale iguana, which is unique to Santa Fe, endemic to Santa Fe, that means it only lives there. And also very playful sea lions, lots of sea lions in this beach. They love this location. Is a very important site where they give birth and where they like to swim with us. Obviously, we are not allowed to touch them, but they get very close to people underwater, especially the little ones that like to play with us. And then we finish our trip in San Cristobal, in the island that is closest to the mainland, okay, where we are gonna do a dinghy drive early in the morning. This is a sea lion that came on top of our dinghy. They are very playful. And then you leave back to Quito. Okay, so this is the west route. Now I want to show you what happens in the east. Okay, and this is a new itinerary that we are doing now with the tip top 4. Okay, So we start again in the same island as the Petrel. And so we visit the first day North Seymour, where we see blue-footed boobies and frigate birds. But then we move to Española, and Española is a very special island. Okay, it's a very special island because there we can see lots of seabirds, like this wave albatross. Okay, that only nest in Española, and they are gonna come back in at the end of March. So you have to know specifically the time of the year to be able to see this bird. They leave in January and they come back late in March. We also see a big colony of Nazca boobies raising their kids, lots of them. We also see the most colorful marine iguanas, which we call the Christmas iguanas, especially when they mate, which is around the end of the year. Very colorful iguanas. And obviously we see lots of tropical fish every time we snorkel. Okay. We also get to spend the afternoon or the morning in this beautiful sandy beach, which is called Gardner's Beach. Okay. The next day, we travel to San Cristobal, to the island that is closest to the mainland, and we go to Punta Pi, to the northeast part of the island. Okay. And so there we are going to have this spectacular view, this view that we are going to have as we ascend to this volcanic formation for the opportunity to see red-footed boobies for the first time. Okay, see here we are going to see red-footed boobies, and that will be the booby that we have in the Galapagos Islands. They are very beautiful. And also, San Cristobal is the oldest island, so the formations there are very beautiful. Then that same day, we move to this beach, which is called Wizard Hill, okay, or Cerro Brujo, and it's, as you can see, a volcanic cone. So we land on that beautiful white sandy beach for a chance to see sea lions. And later, the same day, we circumnavigate this beautiful formation, which is called Kicker Rock. Okay. Then the next day, we visit the station again. So this is something that we do in both routes. And all of the trips do the same. So we visit the station, we see the little giant tortoises, and so on. And then from there, we visit, as I said before, the tortoise camp. And then the next day, we go to Sao Plazas. And in Sao Plazas, we have this beautiful landscape, are very flat islands with a lot of very cool vegetation, including the prickly pear cactuses. And this red carpet width that we have here, and this beautiful landy one. Okay. Then later we move to Bartolome. Okay. Bartolome is an island that is very close to Santiago and has a wonderful view, one of the most iconic views of the Galapagos Islands. Okay. So we are gonna walk on wooden steps to get to the top of this formation for this wonderful view. And this is another place which is in the center of the archipelago that has some influence from the colder currents from the west, where we might see a penguin or two. Okay. Then we jump onto new lava fields that are only 200 years of age, and we look at the morphology of these beautiful formations, and we learn about how they are produced as the volcanic eruptions happen. Okay, so there we travel to the red island of Bravida. This is a beautiful place with a red sand, and this might be another place where we might see flamingos, okay, American flamingos. And this is the view of one of the points that we have during our hikes, where you can see the brackish lagoon where the flamingos are, and also the red sandy beach. Then we move to another formation near Santiago, which is called the Chinese Hat, okay, which is also very beautiful. And also you can there see penguins. And on the back, we have our boat, the Tip Top 4. This is also a good place to see sharks, white tip reef sharks. And in general, sharks, are very friendly in Galapagos. We are not afraid of them. Okay, and so finally we end up in Bachas Beach the last day before you go back to Quito. And that's the best place to take pictures of these beautiful crabs that are so abundant around the Galapagos Islands, the saddle-eyed crabs. And another chance to see flamingos. And from there you return to Quito. Okay. And so this is more or less to compare the two routes. And so as you can see in the west, you might be able to see more marine iguanas, more sea turtles, more penguins, more and flyless cormorants, which you don't see on other islands. And in the east route, on the older islands, you might be able to see more seabirds. Okay, but both routes go to our tortoise camp, which is one of the highlights of our trip, and we will talk more about that. So that's what I wanted to show you about the routes, Rob.
Yeah.
Now we can continue.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I was on the Western route, and so it was really wonderful to revisit all those places, and all those memories came flooding back. So, and now I feel like I need to go back to see the Eastern part, see
Yeah.
the things I missed. There's some amazing sights there. But so yeah, let's power forward. So, can you talk about what like a typical day on the trip would entail?
Yes, thank you for that question. And so let me show you what a plan of a particular day looks like. This will be our schedule, and this is what we did in Española. And we visit here two locations in the same island. All right, so we usually travel at night to reach different places, and we start the day very early in the morning. Why? Because of the heat, but also because we want to be there alone. There are other groups, other boats that might visit at any particular location. However, this is never crowded because it's regulated by the national park. So we start breakfast at 6, and then we go usually for a hike. So we always tell our guests to prepare for what will be the conditions for the particular hike of that day. Then we usually go back to the boat and we give people at least 30 minutes to prepare for the next activity. And so the next activity could be a snorkel briefing, or gear distribution, for example, if this is going to be the first time we're going to be there. And then we go for lunch. Okay. Then after a few hours for digestion, we might go for a snorkeling outing. And so we usually snorkel for up to an hour, okay, because we have limitations with time. And then we go back on board and we might have another activity. So in total, during a day, we might have between 3 to 4 to 5 activities depending on the day. And we tend to start earlier than later. As I said before, to avoid heat in some seasons, and also to avoid crowds, to avoid people as much as we can.
Yeah, we
And
always
so,
got a nice. I was gonna say
sorry.
I always enjoyed getting an early start and getting out there. We tended to miss the crowds, so that was
Right.
really good planning.
Yeah, so this slide is just to show you, how we gear up for snorkeling. So in our operation, we provide you with wetsuits, with snorkel, with mask, with fins, with gloves, and with hoods. And we have 2 seasons, and so you can dress accordingly because during the hot season, like now, you sometimes don't need a wetsuit. But later, when it gets cold, yes, you do. And especially when we snorkel in the west, which is always colder. But we always have a panga driver with us. We have a Zodiac. We have 2 guides looking after a group, and so it's a very safe operation. We also might kayak during our excursions, and we might also snorkel. So what we're gonna see when we snorkel, in some locations like the West, maybe more penguins, maybe more flightless cormorants, but in general, we're going to see a lot of tropical fish, a lot of invertebrates that are very colorful. And depending on the conditions, we might get to see things very clear. But definitely lots of tropical fish, Sea lions are all over the place. They like to play with us, and that's one of the highlights, definitely, of any trip. Sea turtles also are amazing. Obviously, we always respect their space. And hikes, can be complex, or can be easy. So we're gonna tell you every night before those activities, every night how the day is gonna be, so that you can prepare accordingly for that.
All right, thank you. Wow. Well, I got to tell you, I loved learning how to snorkel. I was afraid to do it, and you guys really gave me the confidence to be able to do it. And I saw some amazing sights. So thank you for that. And I loved seeing, trying to get past like a barking sea lion that was blocking our way when we were trying to hike up to Darwin's Cove, and you barked back and you actually got him to move out of our way. I thought that was just absolutely amazing. And and when we were kayaking too, we had a lot of seals just jumping over us, and even in the Zodiacs later, we had the seals just all around us. They were so playful. But I got to say that I think that my favorite part of the trip was Santa Cruz, where we stayed at the Tortoise Camp. Now I know this is an exclusive place to Nat Hab. Can you talk more about this absolutely amazing place?
Of course, and so this is a place that is exclusive for our guests when we are present in these facilities, and this is run by our business partner. And so, as you know, these are people that share the same philosophy as Nat Hab. So Polo Navarro has been running this place with Nat Hab for more than 15 years now. And here we develop important projects for the conservation of giant tortoises, including the restoration of their habitat by planting species that are good to them, or by eliminating invasive species that are a barrier for their movement. And so this is a bit a picture of the place. And so these are the facilities that we have for our guests. We have now 8 tents like these ones that you see here, and they are super comfortable. They have a shower inside, and they have single beds inside, and they have a fan, and they have electric outlets for you to charge your computers or phones. You might need them. But the highlight is to come and see the giant tortoises at a very close range. And so that's what's the beauty of this place, is that you can see them very close. Some of them even live under our tents. So you are gonna see them moving, mating, as we saw the other day. Now, they are not in big numbers all the time up in the highlands because they migrate, but we always see some of them, at least when we visit this particular location. And as I was saying, this is one of the highlights of our operation, because none of the boats that operate here give you the chance to come and spend a night up in the highlands with these beautiful and most iconic animals that we have in the Galapagos. So these animals are actually in the wild, and they are free to go because they are protected by law. It's not that they belong to our business partner; they are not. So they are free to go, and we are just in part of their migratory routes. Okay, so it's a pretty amazing location, where we are gonna spend an afternoon and a night, and then the next morning we will be exploring all about these beautiful giant tortoises. But also in the afternoon, we have another chance to visit another important project that we like to support, which is Montemar. And so Montemar is run by these two great friends of us, Reina and Roberto, and they produce delicious, sustainable coffee to protect giant tortoises. So if you have the energy and you want to go for something extra, you can go in the same afternoon and visit this location, which also has giant tortoises. So you will learn how to taste Galapagos coffee because it's cultivated there. And you will also get to see giant tortoises in the wild. Okay,
And the coffee
that's just
was
a picture.
The coffee was outstanding. It's unique to that area. You can't even get it anywhere in the world. They don't even ship it. So it's really a once in a lifetime experience there.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes,
yes.
Rob.
Yeah. And I also enjoyed our evening at the tortoise camp. They prepared a wonderful meal for us. We had some live music playing. A couple of the Danielle, our guide, joined in as well with a couple
Uh-huh.
of the people there. It was just a beautiful night. A little break from being on the ship. An amazing experience at that camp. Just an amazing experience. Um,
Yeah, this is a picture of the actually the sunset from our tortoise camp. And as you said, yes, we always bring a singer and we have a small celebration just to celebrate, the wonderful opportunity to having people there. And when people visit us, they support obviously this important business.
And make sure you bring some coffee home with you. I still have one bag left, and I'm enjoying it very slowly.
Great.
Um, so, Nat Hab, as we know, believes in conservation through exploration. It's our mission. So, how important is conservation to the islands in maintaining their diverse ecosystems?
Is the most important part. I think that we cannot live without good natural resources. So that's a very important part of our mission as as we travel. The idea is to preserve the islands. And so, for example, specifically in our tortoise camp, we have a beautiful restoration program to bring back endemic species because that's one of the most pressing issues we have. We have invasive species, we have issues such as climate change, plastic pollution, and so on. So we are working on many fronts, but we still have a lot of things to do. But specifically in this particular location, at the tortoise camp, our own guest did a project to restore these plants that I'm showing you here, which are giant daisies that are now 2 years of age and are much taller than the little trees that you see here. They are very important because they provide habitat for many endemic species and also shade for our beautiful giant tortoises. So that's just one example of projects that we are involved, but there are many other fronts that we need to work on. And I think an important one is education. And part of what we do when we travel is educate people about, why the Galapagos are so fragile and why it's important for us to talk about climate change and how to make it less important of an effect that is now.
So, are there any endeavors that you are currently working on or would like to see initiated?
Yes, well, for example, I like to see more education on domestic animals because people here, unfortunately, still have cats and dogs, and they are not very responsible with that. So I like to see some educational programs to raise awareness about the consequences of not being a responsible owner with pets. But Nat Hab, for example, many of our guides are dedicating their time to support a public library that we have here, which provides a lot of books for young kids of primary and secondary school to learn more about the environment. I think that's very good as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing. So, all right, let's get back to the trip. Um, what is your favorite part about leading the Galapagos trip?
Well, the one of my favorite parts is to sort of feel the emotions of our guests when they see the things that we see. And we never take that for granted. And so we always get excited when our guests get excited. I think that's one of the coolest part, one of the parts that I love the most about my job. And I know that people come to the Galapagos with a lot of expectations. And this is such a wonderful place that people can get so close to nature that their hearts are touched by that. So I like that a lot. I also like sunsets and sunrises, and that's always different because we travel every day to a different location. And I just love to enjoy, the hikes and snorkeling with our guests. Yeah, I love it all.
Yeah, well, for us as a guest on the trip, um, getting to experience the trip with somebody who has all this information and who understands what we're seeing and it can also point things out to us the way that you were able to and Danielle was able to made our experience just twice as great as it would have been to have context for what we're seeing and to understand what's behind it. Um, so as much as you were inspired by our wonder, we were inspired by your knowledge and the fact that you were. It felt like it was everything you were experiencing with us at the same time, and that sense of wonder that you had was carried onto us as well. I don't think you ever really lose uh, that sense when you're out there because it's just so unique and amazing. So I think it's a two-way street. Um, so let me ask you this. What is one
Mm.
thing that you would like our guests to know before they come to visit you at the Galapagos?
All right, so that's a very important question because it's important to know about the weather. And in this little graph, I am showing you two things. I'm showing you the amount of rain through the year and also the temperature. Okay, the amount of rain is in the bars that you can see there, and the temperature is in the upper part of the panel with that line that has the scale of the temperature to the right of the slide. Okay, so as you can see, now we are in the warmest months of the year. So that's January, February, March, April. And that implies that it's going to get hot. It is actually hot and it's going to rain sometimes. Okay. But what is very nice about that is that the water temperature is very pleasant, is very warm. Just to give you an idea, is around 78, 79 at this point. Okay. So that's important to know. And then the months of June, July, August, September, October, November, and December are usually very dry, okay, and are characterized by winds, okay. And so that's cool because when the water gets colder, we might see more marine mammals. But also when the water gets colder, it also moves more and it gets colder because of the winds. And so as the winds get stronger, the ocean becomes choppier. Okay, so the worst months for this or the coldest months are August and September, and also is when the wind is strongest. Nothing to worry about that if that's not an issue to you. But if you get really cold, I will probably avoid August and September. And if you don't like very hot, maybe March might not be the best month for you. But any time is good. And just getting to know what are your limits is very important. Okay. And so expect also if you go to the west, where the penguins are and the marine mammals are more abundant, colder waters, right? In general, the west is always going to be colder than the rest of the archipelago. I think that's important in terms of timing, okay? Because some people like warm oceans, some people like cold, some people like calmer oceans, and so calmer oceans are also during the warm season, and that goes from January to April. Okay, so that I think is general advice about the timing of your arrival, and also to consider that when you land in Quito, Quito is a city that is very high up; it's 9,000 feet above the sea level. So take that into account because there are other options if altitude is an issue for you. I think that's what I wanted to say about that question, Rob.
Great, thank you. I was there in July, and the waters were a little chilly, but those wetsuits did the job. So we weren't too cold when
Yeah.
we were snorkeling, and it was very pleasant when we were hiking as well. So more of a spring fall like feel for us then. So I thought the weather was pretty much perfect for those who like something more temperate um, at that time of year.
Excellent.
All right, so before we get to the questions, I just want to ask one thing. What
Uh-huh.
does the future hold in store for you, sir?
All right. And so I think that one thing I want to improve is my skills in photography. And so I am know that in the future we're going to have more trips that are going to be oriented towards that. So I'm going to be learning about that and hopefully leading one of these trips in the near future. Not now because I need to go through some training. But that's one of the parts of my job that I like, these challenges. And so taking better pictures is in my near future. And also always learning about the Galapagos because science about the Galapagos is always new, is always exciting. So I keep busy doing that. I'm also looking forward to build a house here now that I decided that Santa Cruz is going to be my home. And so now I am super happy to answer any questions, Rob. And thank you very much for this opportunity to share my passion with our guest or potential guest in the future.
All right, thank you for would be willing to answer these questions for us. We really do appreciate it. So before we dive into the question and answer session, I would like to remind everyone that if you do have some questions, you can submit them via the question field in your control panel. On the upper right corner of your screen, you'll see those three lines. Go ahead and click on that and go to the question section. All right, so let's dive into the question. Um,
Sure.
any possibilities of seeing orcas or whales in the Galapagos?
Yes, orcas, we heard about the sites every week, but it's not always possible for us to see them. So just to give you an idea, in the 30 years I've been here, I've seen them 10 times in my life. But definitely the western route is better for marine mammals, and that includes killer whales. We usually see dolphins in our trips, and we might see a whale or two, especially when we are in the Western Islands.
Well, we did see dolphins, and somebody said they saw a whale's tail on our trip. I'm not sure. I didn't get to see it, but we definitely saw a school of dolphins swimming in front of our in front of the petrel. So it was pretty amazing. What about flamingos? Are they something that are in the Galapagos all year round? Is it easy to see them?
Yes, so we are gonna see them in at least 3 to 4 locations that we're gonna visit. The best place for that, or one of the best places for that, is Floriana, which I didn't show, but we did do that island with other boats. Also, Rábida, which we do with the Tip Top 4, and also Bachas Beach, which we also did with the Tip Top 4, and we actually show you that in this presentation. So yes, we will be able to see them. They are now a subspecies, and so they don't move away from the Galapagos. They are not migratory. They move from brackish lagoon to brackish lagoon depending on their food resources.
Gotcha. Thank you. Um, so, are there any animals that are dangerous to us? Do we have anything to worry about when we're on the trip?
Well, for example, some people might be allergic to the paper wasp, and this is one that was introduced to the Galapagos. So for that, we usually suggest bring an EpiPen if you are very allergic, or don't wear bright colors. Then also, big male territorial male sea lions might be a risk, but we are always aware of that, the guides, and so we are always careful to let our guests know if they are close to us.
Gotcha. Thank you. So, one of our guests has read that the Galapagos may be overrun with tourists at this point. Is that true? And are there limits to the number of people that can visit at a certain time?
Actually, that's a good question. And this year, the amount of people that came to the Galapagos decreased by 15,000. So we get less people than 2023. And this might be something to do with the fact that we increased the entrance fee of the Galapagos National Park. Now, people been talking about a limit of the amount of people coming to the islands since the 60s, but that hasn't happened yet. However, it's very important, to do sustainable tourism like the one that we do. And so it's important to choose companies that are respectful with the environment. And that will be my advice.
Gotcha. Good advice there. Um, so are we going to have to worry about bugs like mosquitoes at all on the trip?
Yes, during this season, during the hot season, which is January, February, March, and April, especially February, March, and April, which is where we get the most rain. But that's in a few locations and at some specific hours, early in the morning or late in the afternoon. So if you come prepared with insect repellent, that's not going to be an issue.
What about sunscreen? Is that something we should be prepared to have? And did you have a
Yes,
recommendation?
yes, please. Plenty of sunscreen that is gonna be a good filter for you and it's gonna be friendly with the environment. So yes, please bring that because that's more expensive in Galapagos, and we sometimes don't have enough variety.
Gotcha. Thank you. So when it does rain, do we have any alternate programming or things to do, or does it not rain long enough to worry about, or do we just
Well,
power through?
no, that's a very good question. And so the last time we have to cancel an outing because the rocks get very slippery. So that was unsafe, but that was just once, during the last week that we have. So it's unusual. And the showers are usually strong for, a few hours, but then they go and they are very patchy. So they don't happen everywhere in the Galapagos. And so I
Thank you.
said that there is always a chance, but we always try to do the activities when it's safe to do them.
Gotcha. Thank you. Um, so does our trip help the locals? Does it contribute to the local economy?
Yes, definitely, because we work with a lot of local business partners. So these are families that own, the boats, the operations. We also pay very good wages to people that work with us. For example, the salaries that they pay to our guides, our expedition leaders are very competitive, the best, actually, I will say, in the Galapagos. And we always provide with tips also to our the people that work with us. So yes, people are really happy, but also because we work as a team. And so we consider each member of this operation as important as everybody else. So I think that makes this company a really nice one to work for because of all these different things. They pay us well, they treat us well, they make us feel as well.
Absolutely. Um, so can you recommend any books or articles to read that will help us prepare that maybe talk about the history of the Galapagos?
Yes, and so there is a couple of them. One that is very good to learn about the natural selection is The Beak of the Finch. That's a very classical one. Now, if you want to learn about general nature, there is a book written by Michael Jackson, not the singer, and it's called Natural History of the Galapagos. It's a very good introductory book. And then we have several different guides for animals that you are gonna find, once you get here. But I guess that these two books are gonna be two good books to start with to learn about the Galapagos Islands.
We appreciate that advice. So, is it possible for me to do both the West and the East trips back to back so I don't have to make a choice?
Yes, you can do that, definitely. You just stay with us for 15 days, and that way you can do that all at once. The only thing that we are going to repeat is the tortoise camp and the breeding center where we see the little giant tortoises, because that every trip does that.
Gotcha. So, is there any particular time of the year that is good to seeing almost most of these animals, or are there seasonal specific for some?
Well, for example, sea turtles, marine iguanas, and sea lions like colder water. Okay, so you're gonna get to see more marine animals in the cold season, while you're gonna see more land animals, for example, active during the wet season, because water is the limiting factor in the land, and once we get water, a lot of terrestrial animals, including finches, start to reproduce, and the vegetation gets super green, super lush, super colorful.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for tackling some of these questions. Unfortunately, that is going to be the last question that we do have time for today, Luis. So I'd
Yeah.
like to hand
Okay.
it back to you for any closing comments you may have for us.
Nothing, just we are very happy to welcome you here to the Galapagos Islands. And by visiting us, definitely you support conservation, you support the conservation of giant tortoises, and you support the local economy. So thank you for choosing natural habitat, and we just want to be sure to, when you come here, to show you the best.
And I can tell you from firsthand experience, it's an amazing trip. And Luis, you took great care of us on our trip. Thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for taking the time to present for us today. I really appreciate getting to reconnect with you and letting our audience get to know you.
Thank you very much, Robert. It was a pleasure for me to meet you and to talk to you again. And so I'm looking forward for the next one.
Absolutely. We'll see you again sometime. And I'd also
Sure.
like to thank everyone who joined us today. Now, if you are interested in information on how you can travel with Nat Hab, please give us a call or you can send us an email at info@nathab.com. Our adventure specialists are happy to help you out. And you can check out this week's lineup as well of Daily Dose of Nature, including our registration links on our website at nathab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I will conclude the webinar. Goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next time.